It's day 68 of 118 days with the Tudors, and today we're thinking about 1552. Now, I'm very aware this is Edward VI's last full year of his reign, of his life, and we haven't really spoken very much about him. He kept a journal, and I thought we could have a look at what he wrote about 1552 to try and get a bit of a sense of him and a sense of his world around him. So I'm going to give you a little snippet from each month. In January of 1552, he is still celebrating Christmas at court, and he's talking about all the different festivities that are going on, of which he is taking part. He's an observer. And then he talks about how two people come in dressed as Almains, so as Germans. Two people come in dressed as friars, and they have a fight. So it sounds like it was kind of an acted out fight. And then there were two masks, one done by men, one done by women. And then there was a banquet with 120 different dishes. And then he just writes, this was the end of Christmas. In February, he writes, whereupon it was appointed that he should have 2,000 coins for his furnishment and Barnaby 800. I'm assuming he's talking about himself here because for quite a lot of at least the start of the chronicle, he talks about himself in the third person. So he presumably has these 200 coins, and Barnaby gets 800. This is Barnaby Fitzpatrick, and they had their lessons together. So he's one of his closest friends at this time. So he's recording how much money Barnaby is getting. And they were obviously very close. Later on, when he's on progress, he makes a point of noting down when Barnaby leaves. In March, he writes that the Lord of Abergavenny was committed to ward for striking the Earl of Oxford in the presence chamber. A little bit to unpack here. The presence chamber is the chamber where the king would have been residing. So it sounds like one lord has hit another lord, possibly in the presence of the king, and he's been committed to ward. I'm still trying to ascertain exactly what that means, but from what I can gather, it seems that they have been locked up somewhere. If you do happen to know exactly what that means, please do let me know. In April, he simply writes one of his entries, I fell sick of the measles and the smallpox. Now, this isn't what leads to his death, but it does significantly affect his immune system, so that when he gets ill next in the following year, he doesn't survive from it. So this isn't what kills him, but it weakens him. So in the April, he gets measles and smallpox. He doesn't say anything else about it, just simply that. In May, he's obviously getting ready to go on progress, and he gives a list of all the different members of the nobility that are coming with him and how many men they're bringing. And throughout his chronicle, you can see how quickly he moves from house to house. Now, in June, we get lots of confessions from people about how they've been keeping money from the king, and he lists them all, what money they've kept from him and why. What prompted these confessions, I'm not quite sure. I'd have to look into that further, but for example, he writes that Lord Paget, the Chancellor of the Duchy, confessed how he, without commission, did sell away my lands and great timber woods, and how he had taken great fines of my lands to his said peculiar profit and advantage. So he's been selling off things that he shouldn't be. In July, he writes to somebody in Guernsey and asks him to take heed of the church plate, that it may not be stolen but kept safe until order be taken. Now, this time, people were going into churches, so people sent by the king's council, and taking away church plate so that it went to the crown. So this sounds to me like he's essentially saying, keep that safe because I might want it. The churches were having to surrender all their kind of prized possessions, their chalices, their plates, and it was going to the crown. In August, he writes about how the emperor, the Holy Roman Emperor, had been banishing Protestant preachers and banishing Protestant citizens, saying that they were preaching seditiously. In September, we get list after list of all the different places he's going to. So on the 2nd of September, he goes to Lord Stanley's house, on the 5th to Winchester, on the 7th to his Lord's Treasurer's house, and on the 10th to Donington Castle. So he's on the move every couple of days. He also then goes to Reading and to Windsor, and that's all in the space of about 10 days. In October, he writes about a conspiracy that's been uncovered. He says that the Earl of Westmoreland would have taken treasure and would have robbed his mother and sold £200 of land to please the people. In November, he writes about how a man called George Paris has been committed to Stirling Castle because they found out that he was a double agent for the English. That's where his diary stops at the end of November. What I think is really interesting about his diary is, despite being known for iconoclasm and for being a really hardline Protestant, there is very little mention actually in it of religion at all. It's about laws that are being broken and about festivities. So you see a real kind of two-part king here, one that really enjoys the tournaments and the jousting and the feasting and the progresses, and then one that actually wants to document the things that have been broken and what's happening. And also he's really keen in recording what's going on in Europe, all the different battles that are going on there. He keeps a keen record of them. So a really interesting little look into Edward there. But the key thing to take away from this is that he did get smallpox and measles, and that's going to really affect him in 1553. So tomorrow we'll be looking at 1553, which is a big year. There is a lot happening. So we won't dwell too much on the passing of Edward because we have a lot to cover. But I hope it gives you a little tiny insight into the boy king that was Edward VI. And I'll see you tomorrow for 1553.